listening to KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, at 103.3 FM and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. And this is the Midnight Skeptic. The views of the Midnight Skeptic are not, repeat, not necessarily the views of KPCA or any of its affiliates. Well, hello out there again. This is the Midnight Skeptic, and it's November 8th. This is the latest I've ever recorded, the Midnight Skeptic show. I just kept waiting and waiting and waiting for the election to be called. And it was called yesterday, Saturday. And it was so nice to hear all of those people, or see all of those people in the big cities dancing and enjoying this joyous occasion, and a lot of flag waving that were being waved by the people that were just having a joyous experience. It's so nice to see American flag being waved that way and not on the back of a Boogaloo Boy pickup truck. And it was really heartwarming. Okay, got to do some shout outs here. We've gotten a few extra listeners that I've got to acknowledge. First of all, Stan Gustafson, down in Pacifica, California, an old friend of mine. My brother Brandon and his wife Mina and their family down in Santan Valley, Arizona. And the Fishers, Bob, Sandy, Brad, and Martha up in Sonora, California. Along with Darrell Larson up in Sonora, California. And then also I've got to add in there Leonidas Maciel. She was in my high school class along with myself and Bob. And then Tim Munnicky over in Fairfield, California, if he happens to be listening in. Nelson Lydell down in Florida. I haven't heard from him lately on emails. He's a retired United States public health officer, and sends me tidbits now and then that I can talk about. Tim Conrad, who was in my class up in Sonora, and he lives down now here in Petaluma, and is an extraordinarily good photographer. And he's been shown in some galleries around Sonoma County. Mickey Huff, who is the godfather of Project Censored, and he also has a show, a talk show about communications and propaganda and correct news, and he can be heard on KPFA 94.1 FM, and that's over in Berkeley. And then he broadcasts this show from this station, KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, 103.3 FM on Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. And Mickey and the Project Censored people publish a book once a year called Project Censored. And it talks about things that were not adequately covered or covered at all news-wise in the previous year. Dave and Rosie Takach up in Sacramento, and then my cousin Kathy Clark over in Stockton, California. Boy, Herr Doctor, Dr. Dave Rubin, a retired pulmonary doctor who retired from GlaxoSmithKline over in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area. Okay, Karina Hilliard, my favorite herpetologist, down in Patagonia, Arizona. Okay, I think I've got everything there. All right. I mentioned last show how nuclear power plants is definitely an answer to our CO2 emissions from power plants that are currently being run by coal or powered by coal. Those are becoming less and less. Germany has eliminated them altogether, and a lot of European countries are becoming less and less dependent on coal-powered fire. Coal-powered, uh, coal-fired. Jeez, this is too early in the morning. It's about noon here in Petaluma. Coal-fired power plants and oil plants. Okay. And I was going to mention the latest iteration of nuclear power plants, and the very mention of nuclear power sends shudders up the spines of leftists and environmentalists and everything. But the latest generation of power plants are not dangerous in the aggregate. They're they are an alternative. Now, ideally, solar power will be taking over all power generation here on Earth as soon as possible, so we can even phase out the nuclear power plants. But as an interim solution to the problem of global warming, nuclear power should be in the mix to be considered. Okay, New Scale Power is a company up in Tigard, Oregon. That's near Portland. They have been making prototypes of SMRs. Now that stands for Small Modular Reactors. And they're extremely small, and you can connect them up together to make a bigger power plant. But the downside of those, they won't be commercially available for another year or two. And I want to go over the generations of nuclear reactors. There's new nuclear reactors are being built in just 4 countries: Russia, China, India, and the United Arab Emirates. And according to the World Nuclear Association, most in operation now are Generation 2 reactors. There's only a few Generation 3 reactors now, and those Generation 3 reactors have all sorts of safety additions to the generating capacity to keep down. No power generating source is completely 100% safe. There's always some downside to any power generating feature. But anyway, Generation 3 Generation 3 nuclear power plants, there's only a few in operation now. There's only 2 now that are operating in Russia. And you can't guard against every single thing, but leakages of radiation out of a Generation 3 nuclear power plant is just almost non-existent. Okay, except I'm not sure where these are located, but if the Volga River were to suddenly flood over and cover these nuclear power plants with floodwaters, well, okay, that might present some problems. And again, I'm not sure exactly where these are. They should have located these 2 nuclear power plants, Generation 3, away from any places that might happen, but no place is completely safe from earthquakes. But should that happen, these Generation 3 nuclear power plants, in theory, 99.9% certain, will not break apart and start leaking radiation. Okay, Generation 4 reactors are now being studied for commercial applications. And one of the best types of Generation 4 nuclear reactors are sodium fast reactors. Now, you need to have a source of cooling for nuclear reactors. It used to be water-cooled reactors. Well, that water can leak out if some accidents happen, or earthquakes or floods or what have you. Hello, Fukushima. All right, but now they're studying the feasibility of sodium fast reactors. They are cooled with liquid sodium and uses a uranium-plutonium alloy in their fuel rods. And they can utilize even spent nuclear material that are salvaged from as waste from light water reactors. And so they actually cut down on the amount of nuclear waste that we have to, bury in deep mines or something like that. Anyway, so waste is less and less of a problem once these Generation 4 nuclear reactors come online. And the Generation 3 reactors also generate quite a bit less waste than the older nuclear reactors. So the United States shouldn't be freaked out about building an occasional nuclear reactor to help as an interim solution to our power generating problems. And the older nuclear reactors that we have in operation now, and they're becoming less and less, like the San Onofre nuclear power plant, for instance, are rapidly being shut down and taken offline. Excuse me, I need a cup of coffee here. Okay. Notes. I can't do this without my notes. Okay, plastic recycling. All right, I did a segment on this, I think 2 or 3 shows ago, that the oil industry and their efforts to lie to the American people, the consumers, that plastic is easily recyclable and it will be recycled if they just convince people to take their water bottles, plastic water bottles, into recycling centers. And I was talking about how deceptive the oil industry has been about trying to reassure the American consumer that it's all good. We can just keep recycling and recycling and recycling. Well, which is not true, and I said so at the time. And I consider the oil industry lobbyists to be as evil as the old tobacco lobbyists were, that were trying to convince the American public that, cigarettes don't cause cancer. The science is not firm on that topic yet. Anyway, the ExxonMobil, they are one of the worst, or most evil, however you want to say that. They were taking some pages out of the tobacco industry playbook as far as causing doubt in the American public about the real dangers of global warming. There's a good book out called Merchants of Doubt, and I think they made it into a documentary as well. And the author of that book escapes me right now. Um, didn't include it in the. I didn't think I was going to mention this book, but I am. Please go check this out, and I believe it's been made into a documentary. But most plastic recycling produces low value materials, but scientists at okay, and this is a good news thing that I'm going to talk about now. But scientists at UC Santa Barbara, University of California, Santa Barbara, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and Cornell, all respectable, world famous um, institutions of higher learning, have discovered a clean way to turn polyethylene into useful, smaller molecules. Now, plastic are these long chains of polymers, and the various lengths and configurations of these polymers make these various types of plastics. If you've looked at the bottom of bottles or containers or anything made out of plastic, there's a number on them, along with the recycle arrows that kind of go in a circular triangle. There's a bunch of different kinds of plastics. And the kind of plastic it is, you want them to be either more rigid or less rigid. The water bottles that you drink out of are not rigid at all. They're as long as they contain the water, that's good enough. But anyway, these polyethylene chains of polymers represents a third of the nearly 400 million metric tons of plastic the world makes every year. I'm going to say that again. 400 million metric tons of plastic the world makes every year. Okay, in the 60 years of plastic production, we started making plastics, serious amounts of plastic around 1960. Remember the movie, Brain Freeze again, where, it'll pop into my head. But the word of the year was plastics, and that movie was made in the early 60s. Dustin Hoffman, that was his first major role. Jesus. Name of the movie. Come on, Murph. Get those brain signals going here. Okay. Onward. More than 8.3 billion metric tons have been produced in these 60 years. 8.3 billion tons. Okay. However useful they are, the downside of plastics is their indestructibility and slowness of decomposition. Usually several hundred years. Well, that's the problem that we're dealing with now. This new process that these scientists have discovered involves a low heat and a catalyst to break down the polymer chains so that new, smaller polymer pieces liquefy and can be used to make new products. Now, plastics can be recycled only a few times before the polymer chains are just degraded to the point where you just can't use them anymore to make anything new, which is another lie that the oil industry foisted off on the American people, that we can just keep recycling and recycling and recycling. Oh, but over 2 or 3 recycling times, the plastics become unusable to make anything useful. So, anyhow, the good news is that there is constantly being scientific investigations on how to use recycled plastic products, but that's really not a long-term solution. We're just going to get drowned in plastics, and unfortunately, a lot of the plastics that we use do end up in the oceans, and there's been attempts made to clean the plastics out of the ocean. This Dutch kid, I say kid, he's in his early 20s, Boylan Slat, S-L-A-T, started a company called Ocean Cleanup, and his prototype is kind of like a tugboat that drags this huge net attached to these buoys in kind of a U-shaped trawl, and it's not small. It's like 1,000 yards across, dragging it through these patches of floating plastic garbage, and he scoops it all up, puts it in the back of this tugboat-like boat that he has, and it gets compressed, and then when the boat's full, they come back. It was the initial prototype was constructed here at Alameda, the old Naval Air Station, in one of the hangars, and then they took it out and for sea trials, and the net and the buoys kind of broke apart. So they came back, and then they worked out some of the kinks, and they're out there now collecting. Now, as good as that sounds, that's not a long-term solution, because more plastic comes into the ocean than can be collected, and the plastics that are out there really degrade because of sunlight and salt in the water and other chemicals, and they become these micro nodules of plastic that are mistaken, unfortunately, as food, mistaken for food by ocean creatures that are out there looking to eat something. And so we people here on Earth, Homo sapiens, eating seafood, we are accumulating these little plastic micronodules in our own systems. And it's beginning to be a problem health-wise. So anyway, that's one of the bad things that is going to beset this earth. And I don't see a permanent solution to this other than just stop using plastic things. Well, we're not going to do that. So give up on that. Okay, enough about the plastics. Just these good feeling messages about recycling and everything. Find out who the sponsors of these messages are. If it's the oil industry, then just pay no mind to it and flip them a bird and realize that it's just oil industry propaganda, and realize that ExxonMobil is the worst of the worst as far as oil companies go. Okay. Good news. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and the leadership of which is going to be replaced as soon as Joe Biden takes over the presidency here. In fact, all of these federal agencies are going to hopefully weed out all the Trump appointees that are heading these things, and so we can get honest science in there. Anyway, Food and Drug Administration Advisory Board recently recommended that over-the-counter cough and cold medications not be given to kids under 6. And, okay, in the pantheon of evil corporations, drug companies are right up there. Let's see, tobacco companies, number 1 on the evil chart. Number 2, the oil and gas and coal companies. Coal companies are going away. They won't be around very much longer. But anyway, number 3 would have to be the drug companies. This is not in my notes, but I'm just going to mention again that the Sackler family, Sackler, who were the owners of Purdue Pharma, who are now in bankruptcy, but they haven't gotten out of kicking in their share, billions of dollars, to this lawsuit brought by a number of cities and states, and San Francisco is one of them, suing the drug companies, other drug companies, and Johnson & Johnson is another one, about the opioid crisis. Well, Purdue Pharma was the granddaddy of foisting OxyContin off on an unsuspecting public. Rush Limbaugh was a OxyContin addict. I don't know, he may still be for all I know. But anyway, he's not going to be around for a whole long number of years to entertain us with his right-wing radio shows. Anyway, okay, so don't give over-the-counter cough and cold medications to kids under 6. Honey works best according to the journal Archives of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine. The Archives of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine is a peer-reviewed medical journal that comes out with these things. And whenever I've had a sore throat or runny nose, and I'm very healthy, I rarely ever have a malfunction of my throat, as I call it, that seems unusually dried up or a little bit of pain. And it's, like I say, it's been a long, long time since I've had anything like that. I always just take a spoonful of honey, drink it, and let it kind of roll down the back of my tongue into my throat. And then that seems to work on me. And then in extreme cases, and it's been literally decades since I've had an extreme condition, I make myself a hot toddy with lots of honey in it, lots of either lemon juice or lime juice, and hot water, and a good stiff shot of good Kentucky bourbon. Mix it up, and then drink that. And I can't for sure, 100% sure, saying that because I drank that, my sore throat went away. It's just anecdotal evidence, which, as all good skeptics realize, is not evidence. Anecdotal evidence is not evidence. If there were a double-blinded, randomized clinical trial of this, and it came out that, in fact, hot toddies do cure sore throats, then fine. But don't take my word for it. But if you like hot toddies, then go for it. Anyway, honey is a cure, not a cure, but helps the symptoms of sore throats, whatever the cause of the sore throat is, viruses or microorganisms. Honey has antioxidant and antimicrobial properties and soothes on contact. And what they did at the FDA. Well, they themselves didn't do this. This is uh, some other institution, probably a medical university. They actually did a randomized, double-blinded studies with a number of, I didn't read this study myself. I'm just, this is another, I'm telling you what I read, but it was a randomized, double-blinded, placeboed clinical study that honey does in fact work to keep down coughs and colds in kids under 6. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it helps everybody, not just kids under 6. But what they recommend is over-the-counter cough and cold medications not be given to kids under 6. Okay, enough of that. I got to get back on to this pastors thing. Let's see, I'm looking at the time here. Oh, Jesus, I've already been blabbering on for half an hour. Oh, man, I've really got to get my act in gear here. Okay, pastors. All right, the main reason, and this is my opinion, but I think it's accurate, the main reason so many evangelical right-wing pastors won't take COVID-19 or social distancing precautions, like, for instance, limiting attendance at their church services to 25% or even 50% capacity, or to keep social distancing or masking recommendations to their flock, is that it will limit the take in their Sunday collection plates. It's all about the money, really. And then they say, of course, well, we're following God's laws. We can't deny our congregants the opportunity to commune with God. It's our First Amendment rights to worship as we please. Okay, they come up with those reasons for continuing their Sunday sermons in their tightly packed in church. More coffee. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of cures for the common cough and cold, I think the reason that I don't get coughs and colds like ever is because I drink so much coffee. Okay, this is a little aside. It has nothing to do with the Midnight Skeptic or any of the notes I have here. See this coffee? Okay, first thing I do when I get up in the morning and jump in the shower and then really blow my nose just right over the drain to get whatever, and not much ever comes out, but whatever viruses or pathogens are in there get blown out. Okay, second thing I do after getting dressed, I brew up a pot of coffee, and then in this cup, which is about a 16-ounce cup, a little scoop of French vanilla ice cream and a shot of Irish cream. That's a combination of Irish whiskey and cream. Yeah. Okay. And then I drink about half this, and then for the rest of the morning, I just sip it until it's gone. Okay. So caffeine is good for you. It's a good antioxidant, and the actual coffee itself, I mean the beans, the ground up coffee grounds, are a good source of antioxidants as well. Okay, enough of that. That's my morning routine. Okay. Okay, an update from the very last show that I was talking about all these pastors. And this is a local guy. The Santa Clara County District Attorney filed a legal action last Thursday. Now, last Thursday, this is now like 2 Thursdays ago, asking a state court to compel the Calvary Church in San Jose to comply with public health orders. It's been holding services with 600 plus people in their congregation without mandatory masks and without social distancing. It is just extraordinarily stupid that social distancing and masks, the COVID-19 masks, have become a politicized issue. It just boggles my mind that Republicans and a lot of Republicans and extreme right-wing believers view this as an infringement on their rights. Like seatbelts, that's technically an infringement upon people's rights to, slide around their front seat in their cars. But most, I guess 95% of people at least, wear your seatbelts. This mask thing, do they just not believe that COVID-19 is a real threat? Have they been swallowing the Fox News Kool-Aid? I just don't understand people like that, meaning most Republicans. All right. Okay, enough of that. Okay, It's been holding services with 600 people. Church officials questioned the severity of the coronavirus. Okay, well, there we go. They just don't believe the scientists, like Dr. Fauci. Speaking of that, when Joe Biden gets the actual presidency on January 20th, I hope one of the first things he does is offer Dr. Anthony Fauci a head of something in the administration that will, excuse me, my cat is, okay, she likes to be near me. I don't know, one of the few creatures on earth that likes to be near me. She jumps up on the desk here, but she will also, she's good. If I say no, then she won't do it. So she was right down here, ready to jump up on the computer desk. Anyway. Okay, church officials questioned the severity of the coronavirus and claimed they had the right to assemble and worship. Well, yes, they do. It's in the First Amendment. But also, it just makes sense that since God is not going to get rid of the COVID-19 virus, we're going to have to take our health fate into our own hands and take these precautions. Okay. All right, not enough of that. I have updates here. I mean, that was like 2 Thursdays ago. Here we go. Santa Clara District Attorney sues the church. Let me put on my glasses. What's the pastor's name here? Santa Clara County District Attorney and County Council filed a legal action Thursday asking the state court to compel the San Jose Church to comply with public health orders. Why are public health orders a liberal thing? It's just public health. We're trying to keep people healthy. What is wrong with that? Alleging it's been holding indoor services, blah, blah, blah. Calvary Church has been holding weekly services for months despite repeated warnings and $350,000 in fines from the county and discussions between church leaders and county officials. Okay, on and on and on and on. Okay, the obligation to preserve and protect life is at the heart of all major faiths, said Jeff Rosen, Santa Clara County's district attorney. Geez, that makes too much sense. Okay, can have that. Um, okay, Santa Clara County has allowed, according to these health injunctions, has allowed church services at up to 25% of capacity or up to 100 people since October 13th. Masks are required along with social distancing. Well, that really takes away their freedoms and liberty. Excuse me. Cough break. Okay, here's a later. Okay, this was from November 4th out of the Chronicle. Oh, jeez. Oh, okay. Court. Okay, the Santa Clara County DA won his case. Of course he did. The Santa Clara County Superior Court has issued a temporary restraining order that prohibits a San Jose church from hosting large indoor gatherings of more than 100 people, alleging that it violated public health orders requiring people to wear face coverings and practice social distancing. And it ruled on Monday. Now, this is 6 days ago, this Monday. Calvary Chapel's indoor gatherings of up to 600 people posed a threat of a large coronavirus outbreak. And on and on and on. Their attorneys say our client is disappointed due to the fact that this court failed to consider the science before ruling. Of course they considered the science. It's these church people that are ignoring willfully the science behind this. Okay, and the church people say, quote, this is what they're saying, people are in desperate need of spiritual and emotional health on a level that surpasses the coronavirus. Oh, geez. The church will continue to put the needs of the community at the forefront of our ministry. So on and so on and so on and so on and so on. Okay, enough of that. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's a really quickie thing. This is out of today's San Francisco Chronicle. This is what you might say is against poorer countries, social. Oh boy, it's a term that I'm looking for, and that I can't think of right now. Anyway, onward. Okay. Many of the world's oldest and most polluting vehicles are not winding up in scrap yards, as they should be, but are instead being dumped on the roadways of poor countries, where they continue to spew high carbon emissions. And this is from a report by the UN Environmental Program. And it says that from 2015 to 2018, about 14 million outdated cars, meaning higher polluting cars, were exported from Europe, Japan, and the United States, with most winding up in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Social discrimination. All right. One of the authors says that about 80% of those vehicles aren't roadworthy and don't meet European emission standards. Okay, I'm going to hold this up. This is... Okay. Every Sunday in the San Francisco Chronicle, this appears... And it's not just the Chronicle. This is a Steve Newman, Newman, is the collator of these little things. I've been talking about what he's put out in these Sunday missives ever since the Midnight Skeptic started. Most of it, unfortunately, is just bad news, and personally, I get kind of tired of spouting nothing but bad news about the environment. Okay. The UN Weather Agency says 2020 could wind up as one of the hottest years on record, even with the current La Nina ocean cooling across the tropical Pacific. The World Meteorological Organization says that while La Nina produces a cooling effect on the planet, it is now more than offset by global heating. Oh, God, more bad news, more bad news. Okay, one last thing, and then I'll get off of this. This is entitled Collision Course. A huge, and I mean huge, iceberg has broken off of the Antarctic ice shelf, and it's floating around, and it's taking a dead aim at the remote British territory in the South Atlantic. Oh, God, he doesn't... shoot. There's an island that's a British colony, and it's not the Falklands that Great Britain and Argentina had a war over. It's not those. There's another one. South Shetland? I think that's the name of them. I got to renew my geography knowledge here. Okay, remote British territory in the South Atlantic where it could have devastating consequences for the island's wildlife. Iceberg, and they give it this name, A68A, broke off from Antarctica's Larsen ice shelf in 2017. Okay, well, that's 2 years ago. And is predicted to run aground in the shallow waters surrounding, they do name it, South Georgia. That's the name of this island. And it's got 3 different species of penguin colonies on this thing. And scientists from the British Antarctic Survey warned that the chunk of ice, the iceberg, could block foraging routes for thousands of the 3 penguin species that populate the island. Okay. I hope the thing misses, of course. Okay. Back to my notes. Okay, enough of the Calvary Church. Okay. Yay, good news, good news, good news. Nevada, in this last election, becomes the first state in the U.S. to protect same-sex marriage in its constitution, not just a law that can be easily broken by the forces of evil, but it's in their constitution now. And I'm not sure exactly what it says. I'm just reading you the headlines, and that's all I was able to get out of that article. All right, more coffee, more coffee. Okay. Oh, boy. Paula White. Well, this is kind of old news. Anyway, if you look up Paula White, who is Donald Trump's spiritual advisor, it's just a sop to the evangelical right-wing, hard right-wing Christians out there. Paula White. And she was appointed by Trump to head the government's Faith and Opportunity Initiative. And you can Google her rantings and ravings on there. She's praying for God to send a flock of angels down to earth to help secure Trump's victory. Well, she's a bit late for that, or God is late for that, or maybe the angels couldn't catch the heavenly shuttle bus or something. Okay. Here's another pastor, right-wing, evangelical Christian. Okay, his name. Tr- okay, Trump supporting right wing pastor Frank Amadia, 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 says that if Christians don't get out and vote and Joe Biden wins, animalism, this is a quote, this is something he said, will become accepted in America. Meaning that if that somebody can, and this is another quote, can marry a cow and have perverse sex with them. Okay. And he and his wife are head of the Touch Heaven Ministries. And it's a church called Touch Heaven Church in Canfield, Ohio. Oh, boy. Yeah. I just, isn't there a mental health outreach that can reach these people? How have otherwise intelligent Americans allowed their thinking processes to be so influenced by these evangelical Christian pastors? And I would imagine that most of them are Baptists of one sort or another, but it just, I don't know. I hope there's a book out there that I can read about how this came to be, how right-wing evangelical Baptist pastors have acquired all this power over their flocks to make them believe this CRAP. Yeah, it's just, it's disheartening. And when the Midnight Skeptic gets disheartened, I talk about it. All right. I can see by the clock here that I've got about 5 minutes left. KPCALP 103.3 FM cut you off right at 58 minutes, whether or not you're finished with your show, and then they start playing their music. So I've got a little bit, very little bit of time to fill. As things stand now in the 2020 election, it has been called in favor of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But there's still a few outstanding states, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, although that's probably going to go for Trump, and Alaska, although they're probably going to go for Trump. But anyway, Pennsylvania was the biggie. And as soon as Pennsylvania was called for Joe Biden, then it was as official as we can get here. There's still tons of lawsuits being filed at various state courts by the Trump army of lawyers, none of which has succeeded yet. One has. They brought a lawsuit about election observers in the counting offices, and they were the Republicans were griping that they had to stand 10 feet away from observing the vote counters. Well, they lost that. Okay, well, now they can stand 6 feet away, according to the judge. Okay, big victory. It doesn't keep down the accusations of impropriety and fraud, and the whiny man baby Trump is going to continue to try to save face by saying the election was stolen from him. And okay, I'm glad that these 4 years of our country's history is kind of over with. And then we can get back to paying attention to science and reason and looking out for all the people, their health and their welfare and their whatever. The one thing that's going to throw a monkey wrench into all of this is, unfortunately, the state of Kentucky sent Mitch McConnell back to the Senate. And so he's going to be the majority leader in the Senate unless the two senatorial contests down in Georgia are decided in favor of the Democrats, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. So I'm going to send off 10 or 20 bucks to those guys. I can't really afford much more than that, but if you want to help out in some way, it's extremely crucial that those two senatorial candidates are re-elected. Raphael Warnock is running in this runoff election, which is going to occur on January 5th, against Kelly Loeffler. She's the owner of the Atlanta team. I forget what their team is, but in the WNBA, and they all hate her with a passion, the women that play on this team. Okay, so you have been listening to The Midnight Skeptic on KPCA LP, Petaluma, California. And we're at 103.3 on the FM dial and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. Support community radio at patreon.com/Petaluma Community Access. And remember, think critically, think logically, but live joyously, and most importantly, pet your cats.